Well, it looks like my inexperience with podcasting into the public realm and an overwhelming need to demonstrate my lack of judgment is causing me to jump right into a controversial subject and take on myths, rumors, and misperceptions in our swimming program. Hopefully, this helps and doesn't make things worse. I'm Victor Coach Scott Wisner, and this is the Swim Coach Dad podcast. Today, we're talking about club, high school, and college swimming.
I go swimming in the water, swimming in the pool, swimming is cool. I go swimming.
Well, after a lot of discussion over most of the summer and into the fall, high school swimming is happening in Section 5 and some other places in New York. Section 3, where I live, we aren't going to have high school swimming until after winter, so I'm told. But with the girls swimming high school in Rochester area, it seems like a good time to talk about the differences between high school and club swimming and how they relate to college swimming. I can't tell you how many times I've been accused of hating high school swimming by swimmers and parents. Some people just dance around it, and others just come right out and ask me why I hate high school swimming, and then usually tell me why high school swimming is better. I remember there was this grandfather of one of the swimmers in a club where we were coaching, who was telling all of our parents at practice that no club sport was anywhere near as good as the high school team in the same sport. He was big into lacrosse and soccer and football, and I guess that's probably where his perspective came from. I guess I can't understand why he was mad at me when I told him that our 11-12 girls were better than the high school swim team. Maybe that was the way I delivered that information, kind of like that. Okay, so let's get into it. First of all, I don't hate high school swimming, and I really believe that anything that helps kids get into or stay in swimming is great, and something that I fully support. In my opinion, we don't have enough swimmers in the world. The other point is that I swam on my high school swim teams. They didn't add the rules allowing kids younger than 9th grade to swim high school, so I only practiced with the high school team when I was in 7th and 8th grades, and I swam meets for my club. But yes, I swam high school, and in fact, I hold the distinction of being a high school state champion in 2 states, New York my junior year and Iowa my senior year. It was a very important part of my life then. But at the time, my little world in Watertown, New York and Bettendorf, Iowa, the differences between club swimming and high school swimming were far less than they are now. In fact, the way I trained with my clubs was very similar to the way I trained on the high school team. We swam every morning in both, we swam every afternoon in both, and we swam on Saturday practices in both. The club swam after the high school in almost every case. And in club for a while, we had Sunday practices that included most of the high school swimmers that were more like camps or clinics, where we worked on technical stuff like starts, turns, technique, skills, things like that. It was also a different environment then as well. When I swam high school, there were more schools with teams. Every high school in the Syracuse City School District had a team at every high school, and some were pretty big. Now they have one team for all 4 city high schools, and they can barely get 12 swimmers together. Most of that has to do with the club environment in the Syracuse area. At that time, the Syracuse Chargers had something around 600 swimmers on their club, and they had programs in nearly every city pool that there was. All the high schools, all the community pools, everything was the Syracuse Chargers had. That fed the high school teams in the area and brought up the level of swimming all around. There were also strong teams in Liverpool, strong club teams that fed the high school team there. They had one of the top teams in the state in high school every year. Plus, there were strong teams at Rome Free Academy, Jamesville DeWitt, and Christian Brothers Academy had their own team, which now is combined with Jamesville DeWitt. But that team at that time at CBA was made up of mostly of Syracuse Charger swimmers and coached by one of the Charger coaches. There are so many other schools with teams then, and that's a reflection on the club situation too, because the clubs were there to feed the high school teams, and now they're not there anymore. But it shows you how the club and the high school programs are interrelated and how they need each other. The clubs need the swimmers from the schools, and the schools need the swimmers that have come up through the club programs. In the Rochester area, it was very similar. There are some very strong programs in the area, and while Pittsford has continued to do well, others in the grand scheme of the sport have not kept up. So while many believe that the high school swimming is the most important part, club swimming is traditionally what fueled the high school teams. Swimming isn't usually a sport you can start doing it in high school and be an outstanding swimmer just from that. You need the clubs to develop the swimmers when they're younger. We know and accept that many of our swimmers love to swim high school and look forward to leaving the club when high school season starts. And it's the main reason they even darken our doors at practice is to swim better in high school. And that's fine because, in a way, the way we train, that will help them in both high school and club. And we know there are high school only swimmers who don't really do that much with the club and don't go to a lot of meets. There are high school mostly swimmers who do come to practice and do go to meets, but it's not the most important thing for them. And then there are some club only swimmers who focus completely on swimming through the club, either by necessity or because they're better suited for club events. They simply prefer swimming with the clubs. My two children are those club only swimmers. Kai was one simply because we don't have a high school team for the boys in our school district, and no other high school would take him, allow him to swim for them because he would be taking opportunity away from taxpayers. And he also wasn't really interested in swimming high school because he wanted to develop other events than high school events. So Taryn could swim high school, but she would be swimming for a really weak team that swims with a city team. So they only get to swim in open lanes at meets, and their practices are far easier, and it's a totally different level of swimming. So she doesn't bother with that. And we know we have a mixture of swimmers who have different goals and different reasons for swimming with us. Some swim high school, and yet we've had traditionally a number of swimmers who didn't swim high school and swam for club, even though they had the opportunity to do so. We had some that swam a couple of years with high school and then swam with a club for the rest of their high school season, or their high school career. So we're what I call a club-centric swim club, in that we focus our training to apply to club meets in the club season. There are high school-centric clubs who focus on preparing swimmers to swim better in high school, and so their high school teams seem a lot better than their club teams because so little attention is given to the club part. But we do have those in our area, but we focus on the club, the events that we swim at championship meets with our club, and and that has some bearing on how our swimmers swim in high school. But we focus mostly on preparing kids for those meets. All right, so let's get into the difference between club and high school swimming and how they relate to college swimming and why we train differently. High school season usually something around 12 to 14 weeks from the first practice to the state meet. In comparison, our season is 32 weeks long for a short course season and 18 weeks long for the long course season. In high school, most programs have somewhere between 12 and 15 dual meets. They'll swim a couple of invitationals or relay meets, and some areas have conference meets throughout the state. And then you have sectionals and states for a few. So there's a total of about 15 to 17 meets over 12 weeks, with most of those concentrated in that 8-week period. From the middle of September till the middle of November. Dual meets are usually during the weekdays in a normal season, with only a few on weekends. With the club, our older swimmers may swim a total of 11 or 12 meets over 32 weeks. We usually suggest they go to a meet every month or 3 weeks so we can get training in. So from October until April, our swimmers might swim 7 or 8 one-day or 2-day meets, and then a mid-season championship style meet where we have prelims and finals. Some of you guys have gone to the Star Invitational that we go to in December, which is that meet usually. And then we have championship meet in March and LSC championships, and then in April we have zones and Speedo sectionals. So we're swimming 11 or 12 meets as opposed to 15 to 17 meets, and ours are more spread out. High school swimmers may have 2 or 3 dual meets in a week during peak season, which only leaves 3 or 4 days for training. And that's usually only a couple of weeks that happens, but it happens. Our schedule allows for about 3 or 4 weeks between meets so we can train more. For meets, high school allows 4 swims, so most a swimmer can swim in a session is about 850 yards. That's the 200 IM or freestyle, the 500 free, a 50 in a relay, medley relay or free relay, and the 100 in the 400 free relay. Our meets vary, but for the most part, our swimmers swim 3 to 5 swims in a 1-day or 2-day meet, and then in championship meets, they usually swim 2 to 3 meets, 2 to 3 events per day, with a total of 6 or 7 events over the course of the championship meet. So all season, we train our swimmers to do well in our 3.5-day, 7-session, 6 or 7 individual event plus relays championship meet, where a single session, our swimmers may race 2,000 yards. That doesn't include warm-up and warm-down. The longest event in high school is 500 free. And the only other events longer than 100 are the 200 IM and 200 free. In the club, the longest event is the 1650, but there are 9 events longer than 100 yards in a championship meet. So we tend to swim longer events and more of them. In high school, sectionals and states, prelims are 1 day, finals are a day or two later. For the club, our prelims might end noon or 1 o'clock, and finals start at 5 p.m. So you really have to swim fast again right away. So you have to train to recover fast enough to pull that off. With these differences, the training requirements for club swimming are quite a bit different than high school. We do more aerobic training for endurance, and high schools typically do more speed work and sprinting because that's what's important for that kind of swimming. Okay, so if we're working towards the next level, let's talk about how high school and club swimming relate to college swimming. Colleges get 144 days to train in season, so that's about 24 weeks. That's 6 days per week of training, and that's what's considered in-season practice. That's right between the 12 to 14 weeks of high school season and the 32 weeks for club season, for our short course season. Colleges usually swim all year, though. Keep that in mind. It's not like that's all they swim. They swim before and they swim after their in-season time. But the NCAA rules are a little different for in-season than out-of-season. Colleges are allowed 20 weeks or 20 hours of contact time during the in-season. So that includes practices, swim practices, weight workouts, dry land, and meets. And at the club, we try to be right around 20 hours per week with our senior swimmers, which includes dry land practices, and we try and, once we get back in our pool, we'll try and do mornings too. High school varies, but mostly they're about 12 to 15 hours per week. That's a 2-hour practice 6 times a week, plus some dry land and weight work. Some do mornings, but mostly they're a bit less than us. The training is more specific for stroke and distance in that way for college. So it's different than we train. We train, for the range, as I said last week, and we train for a variety of strokes, whereas IMers do IM, distance swimmers do only freestyle. So I know that some of our distance swimmers didn't swim any other stroke other than free in practices for 4 years of college. So that's a bit different than what we do, and maybe a little bit more similar to what high schools do, because I know some of our high school swimmers don't swim a lot of different strokes. They do their main strokes because of dual meets being important. Most college programs have about 8 to 10 dual meets or double duals. That's getting to be kind of like the main thing. Well, they'll do fewer meets, but they'll have 3 teams at a single meet. They have a mid-season invitational and then a conference championship meet, so 10 or 12 meets during the season over 24 weeks. So they don't have meets every week, and most colleges schedule their meets on Fridays and Saturdays. So it's a bit more like club swimming, and in that regard, in that they're not doing a lot of meets all in succession. They would never have, some will have two meets in a week, but they'll be Friday and Saturday, and they'll be, because they're in the same town and there are 2 colleges there or something. Swimming dual meets are an interesting thing, because for some colleges those are really important because there's a lot of rivalries and things. And swimming dual meets is really something that takes some practice at doing. I remember when Kai was a freshman at college, they had a tight dual meet against another college, and he had a big lead in the 1,000. Which is the second event. The coaches on the side were making all these hand gestures, and he had no idea of what they were trying to tell him. So he thought they wanted him to swim faster. Since he swam for Coach Mike, he was used to him going crazy when he's having a great swim or trying to get him to go faster and really push. So he thought that they were trying to get him to go faster. So when he finished, they had to have a discussion about slowing down and saving himself for the 500 free, which was usually about 45 minutes to an hour later. He looked at them like they were crazy because nobody ever told him to slow down before. I mean, we just never had any reason to. And he had never been at a dual meet, so the idea of swimming for points rather than time was completely foreign to him. From then on, they had a set signal to get him to slow down, and he figured it out so that he knew where he had to be versus the other swimmers to kind of back off. He never really slows down. He just backs off a little bit. And he also had a situation last year where they needed someone to score high in the 200 IM in a dual meet. And it was something that was really, it was a make or break, because the 200 IM is the last event before the 4 and free relay in dual meets. So it was a tight meet, and he had already won the 1,000 and the 500, but he stepped up and told the coaches he had swum the IM. But the coaches said he was done, and they had one of their best swimmers, probably their best swimmer, swim that. They lost the meet because they couldn't use him on their 400 free relay because he was in the IM. So the next time that happened was later in the season, in January. They gave him a shot. They gave Kai a shot, and he ended up getting second, just getting out-touched by a teammate for the win. And he swam really well in it. And they talked about how he did that, and he said it's just like swimming in club. So for him, that really helped him. The fact that Mike would have him swim 5 events in a one-day, invitational meet was good practice for college, because he'd come back and swim again and swim again and swim again, and still be pretty strong. And he was also in that kind of shape. He's physically capable of doing that. So the positive that high school swimming provides are that there are more chances to race in a short time in high school, more of a chance to race head-to-head with other swimmers in dual meets, because like in club meets, you may have somebody, a big rival may be in another heat, and you don't get to swim head-to-head against competition. There's that experience of racing like that really works well, translates well from high school to college dual meets, especially since most college dual meets, as I said, are fairly important to the success of the team. There's also a great sense of team that you get from high school that translates well into college, and the school pride in swimming for your college also is another reason the high school swimming is positive, because you feel that you feel that. Club swimming provides a solid training base that translates into college swimming, the training part of it well, and the championship meet experience is also helpful, because we do trials and finals, prelims and finals in the same day like they do in college. So, our kids are used to that. We have a longer season, so more like college swimming, and believe me, that's grueling when you're starting the first week in September and you're going all the way till basically mid-March, early March. It's a long time to be training and taking a college level academic schedule. So that does help our kids do well in college. And then our swimmers are used to swimming a variety of events, so they're more useful for the college teams because they can swim, longer events and more events of those. So like that's what Kai's experience was in that IM situation. So just keep in mind that being a student athlete in college is pretty demanding. So if you're struggling to adjust to longer workouts in college because you're not used to that kind of yardage, it'll be even harder with demands of college academic schedules. So keep that in mind. I mean, it is something important that you need to remember. Since swimming is a non-revenue sport, the team grade point average and graduation rate in college is actually more important than winning and losing dual meets, to the university itself or to the college. Obviously, the coaches like to win dual meets, but the university and the athletic director like to see a high grade point average. I do see more swimmers struggle with the academic part of it combined with swimming. The overall demands of doing academic work and swimming are more than they're used to. So while it might seem like I don't like high school swimming, it is more that it's a different form of the same sport compared to club. We have to train a different way. We have some swimmers who choose not to swim high school because for them, club swimming will help them to their goals more than high school swimming will. Remember, just like swim clubs, not all high school swim teams are the same, too. There are some weak clubs or weak high school teams, and our swimmers may do better swimming with the club. So anyway, thanks for listening. Join me again next time when we talk about the differences between cats and dogs. No, really, it's about swimming. I promise. For Swim Coach Dad Podcast, this is Scott Wisner reminding you to keep swimming.